I think it's about time we finally talk about Estée Lauder, the giant beauty conglomerate that has been in the news a lot recently, and as usual, it's not for anything good that they've done. But this is such a big brand with so much history and controversy after controversy that we're going to have to break this deep dive up a bit. We'll go into the more recent history and controversies the brand has faced in the next videos, but today I want to focus more on Estée Lauder, the founder, who she was, how she built the brand, and what legacy she left behind in the world of beauty. Starting with her very mysterious origins and playing tricks on department store buyers to break out products and lies about her upbringing, there is a lot to talk about with Estée Lauder. It's going to be a long one today, so let's get started. Chapter 1, Becoming Estée Lauder. For someone with such an iconic name, it might be a surprise to hear that Estée Lauder didn't actually start out with that name. In fact, she was born Josephine Esther Mentzer. Bizarrely, her date of birth is even something that's debated. Like, she's some kind of mysterious legend. Urban legend. She's real, but some reports saying that it was July the 1st, 1906, whilst others say she was born in 1908. And as we'll see, this is all just a small part of the mystery and intrigue that built up around Estée Lauder throughout her life. What we do know is that she was born to Hungarian and Czech immigrants in Queens, New York. The specific area she grew up in was called Corona, or Corona, I just want to say Corona, though it was also known as the ash heap of New York because it was a dumping ground for the coal-burning furnaces and other rubbish. Whole barges and truckloads of ashes were dumped in the area, creating a 60-foot-high mountain of ash. Unsurprisingly, it wasn't a very affluent area. Her father ran a hardware store, and the family lived in an apartment above that store. And Estée was the youngest of 9 children. And like the rest of her 8 siblings, when she wasn't at school, she worked at her father's hardware store. She was apparently particularly good at creating the window displays to entice customers in. She later said that her experience working in her father's store was something that helped teach her what it took to be a successful entrepreneur. So the business side of her personality seems to have come from her father, but her mother was the one that inspired her interest in beauty. Her mother was apparently someone who put a lot of effort into her appearance and the way that she presented herself. Estée has talked about being in awe of her mother's beauty and how she used to love brushing her mother's hair and helping her apply face creams. Her parents' influence undoubtedly helped shape the businesswoman Estée would go on to become. But there were also other family members who played a big role in preparing Estée to be a pioneer in the world of beauty. She would also help out a small department store run by her sister-in-law, Fanny Rosenthal. Unlike her father's hardware store, this shop was a woman's world. It was here that Estée says that she learned what women wanted, what they liked, and how to sell to them. It was a place created by women, for women, and it had an atmosphere that allowed Estée to learn how to speak to anyone, using her personality and genuine interest in people's lives to basically connect with them. It was an experience that would become fundamental to how she would grow her own business in the future. Talking about her time spent working at the department store, she once said, "I whetted my appetite for the merry ring of a cash register. The ladies came to buy and smiled and bought more when I waited on them. I knew it, I felt it. I learned early that being a perfectionist and providing quality was the only way to do business." That may have taught Estée how to sell, but she still needed to know what to sell. And that's where another family member comes in. When Estée was 16, her uncle, Dr. John Schatz, moved in with the family in their apartment above the hardware store. Dr. Schatz was a trained chemist, and he immediately started creating his own cosmetic formulas in the family's kitchen before eventually turning an old stable behind the building into a makeshift laboratory. Unsurprisingly, Estée soon became fascinated by her uncle's work, and she started spending less time in the hardware store and more time helping her uncle, learning how to formulate skincare products and how to properly apply them. He founded a company called New Way Laboratories in 1924 and began selling creams, lotions, lotions, rouge, and fragrances, as well as some non-cosmetic products like suppositories and a treatment for dog mange, something like that. Estée wasn't interested in mange though, unsurprisingly, but she helped with the beauty products, mixing ingredients, filling jars, as well as demonstrating and selling the products. It was her uncle's encouragement of Estée's interest in cosmetics that really set her on the path that she eventually took. He taught her his formulas, explaining why a particular compound cleared up blemishes, which ingredients made an effective moisturizer, why cleansing oil was gentler on sensitive skin than soap, and sharing all of his secrets. All of his opinions, by the way. Estée was inspired by her uncle's work, and she soon became obsessed with giving people beauty makeovers using his formulas, and even started experimenting with her own tweaks to his formulas. And according to stories told by her family, anyone who sat down long enough, whether it was a friend, a classmate, a family member, would be subjected to one of Estée's treatments. In her autobiography years later, she wrote that her father even once told her to stop fiddling with other people's faces. Looking back, she said, "But this is what I like to do. Touch other people's faces, no matter who they are, touch them and make them pretty." It was while testing out these products on anyone who she could get her hands on that Estée started using a practice that would one day become synonymous with the Estée Lauder brand: free samples. She would apparently thank her test subjects with samples of the cream she'd been working on that she would eventually name the Super Rich All-Purpose Cream. She said that giving out these samples and helping her classmates with their skin troubles made her very popular in her senior year of school. But she knew there was something more important developing. She said, "Deep inside, I knew I had found something that mattered much more than popularity. My future was being written in a jar of cream. My moment had come and I was not about to miss seizing it." Her rise to beauty mogul wasn't a straightforward one, and despite positive early experiences in the beauty and business worlds, it would be a very long time before she launched her own namesake brand. So she continued to help her uncle with his business, as well as trying to sell her own creations or adaptations of his formulas throughout her teens and early 20s. Then she met Joseph Lauder, an entrepreneur in the garment business, who she later married in 1930. They had their first child, Leonard Lauder, 3 years later. Being a mother and a housewife in the 1930s meant that Estée's own business ventures really slowed down for a few years, but they didn't stop completely. Estée was still developing her products and doing her best to sell them in the spare time that she had. She even made trips to see relatives around the US to try and promote her and her uncle's products. She was determined to find her own success and to build her own business. And it was during this time that Estée's name changed for the last time. Until around 1937, she still went by Josephine Esther Lauder, or Estée as her parents nicknamed her, but she decided that she needed a new name for herself and her brand, like a branding, something that conveyed the prestige feel that she was going for. It was her nickname that she chose to adapt for her new brand name. She apparently decided to change it to Estée though, as it sounded more French, more European, more sophisticated. At the time, European luxury was heavily associated with prestige cosmetics, so the change made sense. It was a good move. Finally, the name Estée Lauder was born, though the brand we know today wouldn't come about until almost a decade later. Chapter 2: Birth of the Brand. Despite the new name, the new branding, Estée's first real breakthrough didn't come until the early 1940s when she was having her hair done at Florence Morris Beauty Salon in Manhattan. The owner of the salon apparently made a comment about how flawless Estée's skin was, so Estée obviously started telling her about the products that she had been working on. She basically agreed to bring a load of samples back to the salon when she had her next appointment, and a month later she returned laden with skin creams, and she proceeded to demonstrate to the customers while they were under the hairdryers and those big things. The salon owner was apparently so impressed that she asked Estée to run a beauty counter in a new salon that she was opening. It was the first real indicator that this could actually be a legitimate business, and it wouldn't be long afterwards that the Estée Lauder brand as we know it was launched. Just a few years after her salon breakthrough, Estée and her husband Joseph decided to go all in on the cosmetics business. Joseph quit his job and started working behind the scenes, handling the finances, the logistics side of things, and Estée would obviously take charge of the product development, marketing, and sales. It was at this point that Estée decided to change the packaging as well. Until now, her formulas had been packaged in basic medicinal looking white jars with black lids and stick-on labels. She wanted something more glamorous, more fitting with the high-end clientele that she wanted to attract. She apparently spent months deciding on the new packaging. First, she got samples of glass jars in various colors. She thought that might work together. Then she says when she was at a wealthy friend's house or at a high-end restaurant, she would excuse herself and go to the bathroom. Then she'd get out her sample jars and hold them up to the wallpaper, kind of like trying to decide which one best matched with every bathroom decor, which is actually very, very clever. So after spending a concerning amount of time in other people's bathrooms, she finally decided to go with pale turquoise glass jars with the brand name and product details embossed in gold lettering. She felt that they gave the brand a sense of luxury and glamour, and that they best complemented the bathroom decor of the wealthy at the time. I mean, I'm trying to imagine like turquoise and gold in my bathroom now, and it is giving Britney, you know? So with the new packaging finally sorted out and her husband behind the scenes helping out, the Estée Lauder cosmetic brand was finally incorporated in 1946, with the couple investing everything they had into the business, despite advice from family and friends that they were making a huge mistake, taking too big a risk. They started with just 4 products: a cleansing oil, skin lotion, creme pack, and the star product, the super rich all-purpose cream. Cleansing oil was originally marketed as a deep pore cleanser designed to gently remove impurities. The skin lotion was a refreshing toner astringent designed to be used after cleansing to leave skin firm and fresh. The creme pack was a stimulating mask, that was meant to be used for 5 to 15 minutes to increase circulation and lift or firm the skin. These all sound so old-fashioned. And finally, the super rich all-purpose cream was described as a cleanser, lubricant, night cream, conditioner, and foundation all in one. And it was supposedly highly versatile and meant for everyday hydration and care. I don't think you could quite get away with advertising something as all those nowadays, but at the time it was revolutionary. Everything was handmade by Estée and Joseph at this point. Basically working out of their home kitchen, together they produced, packaged, and sold their creations on their own. But despite their humble beginnings, Estée had always insisted that she wanted her brand to sit on the same shelves as the most luxurious products on the market. Elizabeth Arden, Helena Rubinstein had already proven that women could succeed in the world of luxury beauty. Estée wanted to follow their example and prove she could do it too. Chapter 3: Breaking into Prestige Beauty. In the year after officially launching the brand, Estée had managed to get her products into more salons, hotels, and beach clubs. The business kept ticking over slowly, not making huge amounts of money just yet, but doing okay. But she was desperate to get the big department stores to stock Estée Lauder products because the prestige that would come with it would take the brand to a whole other level. It wasn't easy to do though, and despite meeting with buyer after buyer, spending 25 weeks traveling around the US pitching to potential partners, Estée just couldn't get any other major department stores to stock her products. This was when she came up with an idea. She decided she was going to go to Saks Fifth Avenue, Saks on Fifth, to stock her products, and she would do whatever it took to make it happen. The problem was that, just like all the other department stores, Saks had never heard of Estée Lauder or her products. Buyers at high-end stores like this weren't in the habit of taking a chance on some unheard of products made in a restaurant kitchen, unsurprisingly, and the brand didn't have any prestige, any wealthy backers, or sales figures that would convince a store like this to stock their products. They had nothing. In short, Saks didn't think there was any demand from their customers for what Estée Lauder was selling. So Estée changed that. She created the demand, and she did it in a few different ways. So instead of trying to convince the buyers directly, she went around them. She asked friends, family, acquaintances, anyone she could think of to start calling Saks or going into the store and asking if they carried Estée Lauder products. The salespeople at Saks kept getting the same question over and over again, kept hearing the same brand name over and over, so they passed it on to management, telling them that all these people were asking for this brand. That on its own wasn't enough though. Estée also realized that although her creams and oils were effective, they weren't necessarily the most flashy or exciting products to many women at all. So she also started selling a lipstick, rouge, and eyeshadow, as they were something that got women more excited at the time and helped drive demand in those early days. She thought if she can get them to come to her for makeup, she could then sell them on her skincare products too, or give them free samples at least of her creams so they could see for themselves how well they worked and what they were missing out on. The final piece of the puzzle came in the form of a charity ball held at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York. Estée attended the event, though it's unclear how she got invited, but she was known for doing everything she could to associate herself with the wealthy or the well-connected, as those were the kinds of people who wanted to buy her products. Well, she wanted to buy her products, sorry. While she was there, she didn't just make polite conversation though. Instead, she gave out dozens of free lipsticks to the guests. And this was an unusual move. At the time, luxury brands weren't known for giving away their expensive products. It was a tactic that Estée helped pioneer, and it would work wonders for her brands for decades to come. In the days and weeks after the charity ball, Saks Fifth Avenue had a steady stream of wealthy women coming in and asking if they sold Estée Lauder lipsticks. Suddenly to Saks, Estée Lauder wasn't a new, unknown brand anymore. It was a brand that was in demand, and as far as they could tell, they were missing out on sales. So the plan worked in the end, and Saks placed an order with Estée Lauder in 1947 worth $800, which might not sound like much, but that was a lot of money at the time. It would be over like 10,000 in today's money. But Estée now had a new problem. They didn't have the space at home to fill an order of this size, especially if things worked out and they got more orders and had to fill them quickly. So they decided to rent out a disused restaurant in Manhattan to be their new base of operations. They had to pay 6 months rent up front, which cost them every penny they had at the time. The Saks order had to go well, or it could mean the end of the business. But now that she had got her foot in the door, Estée wasn't going to waste the opportunity. She showed up in person at Saks and did what she'd been doing for years, what she knew would work. She used her personality to put customers at ease, demonstrated her products on them, gave away free samples of anything they didn't buy, and of course, she touched people's faces. It was what had worked for her every step of the way so far, and it worked again, even in a much more prestigious setting. In the end, it just took 2 days for Saks to sell through their initial stock of Estée Lauder products, and they wanted more as soon as possible. It was a huge success and a special moment for Estée. What she'd been working on so hard for decades at this point had finally paid off. She'd finally broken into the luxury market, taken formulas she was playing around with as a 16-year-old with her uncle, and made them into something the most prestigious stores in the country wanted. Not long after that, Neiman Marcus started stocking the brand as well. They already had a reputation as a high-end retailer by that point and were just starting to expand outside of their original Dallas location. It was the perfect time for Estée Lauder to join the list of luxury brands stocked by the growing retail chain. But even though this may seem like the peak of success for Estée Lauder at the time, it was really just the start for a brand that would go on to dominate the beauty industry. Chapter 4, the product that changed everything. Beauty empires aren't built overnight though, and despite finally breaking into major department stores, it would be a long time before the brand became a household name. But Estée finally achieved that level of recognition with the release of one product that took the beauty industry by storm, the Youth Dew Bath Oil. It was the early 1950s by this point, and at the time, perfume was something that was too expensive for most women to buy themselves. It was something that they waited for men to buy them as a gift, and something they only wore on special occasions because it cost so much money. Estée said she wanted to change this. She wanted perfume to be more accessible to women, something they could buy themselves and wear every single day. The problem was that high-end fragrances were still so expensive to make and generally sold for anywhere between $25 to $50, which again at the time was a huge amount of money back then, like £300 to £600 in today's money for a bottle of perfume. The answer Estée came up with was the Youth Dew Bath Oil, which was a combination of bath oil, obviously, and a small amount of perfume. It smelled of rose, jasmine, vetiver, and patchouli, and sold for just $8.50. $1.50 when it was first released, making it far more affordable for women in the 1950s. And because it was positioned as more of a standard toiletry item rather than a luxurious fragrance, it was easier for women to justify buying it as part of their regular grocery shop. And it was a huge success for the brand, selling over 50,000 units in its first year, at which point it accounted for 80% of all Estée Lauder's revenue. Youth Dew wasn't the first scented bath oil ever made, but it was by far the most successful. It was the product that made Estée Lauder a household name. It was such a popular product that the brand even went on to release a whole range of Youth Dew products, including soap, eau de parfum, spray, like a spray, a moisturizing lotion, and a scented dusting powder, and so much more. Part of what made it so successful was the fact that Estée gave it away for free at first. When Youth Dew first released, Estée Lauder would give you a free bottle if you bought any of their other products, which is crazy. This let customers try it out for free and then come back to buy more when they realized how good it was. It was one of the most successful examples of her gift with purchase strategy. Within a few years, Youth Dew was generating millions in revenue for the brand. It transformed the company, turning it into a multi-million-dollar business almost overnight. This marketing tactic wasn't something Estée invented herself, though a lot of people would tell you that she did. But even if she didn't invent it, she definitely used it more effectively than pretty much any other brand in history, to the point that it's become synonymous with the Estée Lauder brand. And this kind of strategy had always played a big part in Estée's success. Even way back when she was trying to sell her uncle's creams as a teenager, she always believes that the products should be able to speak for themselves, and that if she could just get customers to try them, then they'd want to come back for more. Before the gift with purchase model, she'd even tried like a slightly different tactic for years. This was in the days before credit cards were like really a thing, but most department stores did offer select customers the option of using a charge card, which was basically a store card that let them charge for purchases to their store account, which could be paid off later. Store card. The fact that department stores had this option was part of the reason Estée had been so keen to get her products into department stores. She found that she'd often lose out on sales because the customer just didn't have enough cash on them at the time, so they actually couldn't make that purchase while she was standing there with them and the experience was fresh in their mind. Department stores offering credit meant that customers who didn't have cash on them could still make purchases, so she lose out on fewer sales. But another benefit of this system was that the department stores kept names and addresses for anyone with a charge card for their store. This basically gave them a mailing list that they could use to contact customers to make them aware of sales or new products coming into the store. Kind of like email, like newsletters of today, you know, subscriptions. And after a lot of resistance from the store managers, Estée eventually managed to convince most of them to let her send out gift cards to customers using the details that they already had. These gift cards could be exchanged for a free Estée Lauder product, which Estée finally convinced these store managers was a good idea for them as well, because once the customers were in the store, there was a good chance they'd actually spend money on other products. This kind of clever marketing and strong understanding of how customers thought, combined with the level of brand recognition Youth Dew had given them, meant that Estée Lauder was perfectly poised to take over the beauty industry in the following years. And as we know, that's exactly what they do. Chapter 5: Growth of an Empire. After the success of Youth Dew, Estée Lauder started their rapid expansion phase. Funded by the millions the Youth Dew line was bringing in, they could afford to release new product lines more often, as well as starting to expand outside the US. One of the most successful products to be introduced during this time was the Re-Nutrieve cream. I think I'm saying that right, which came out in 1956. Estée advertised this as the creme of creams. I hate that word so much. I'm just gonna say cream, claiming that it contained 25 miracle ingredients, including turtle oil, shark oil, royal jelly, silicone, and leech oil. She even told people that the formula was so valuable that it was kept locked away in a vault. According to an article by Cosmetics and Skin, none of these ingredients were rare or expensive at the time, but the US was apparently in the middle of a craze for cosmetics with allegedly miracle biological ingredients, so Estée Lauder decided to capitalize on the trend. An advert at the time said, "Miracle cosmetic ingredients, like miracle drugs, are being discovered faster than you can pronounce pronounce the names. Usually they appear one at a time in a cosmetic potion, and you are torn between royal jelly and vitamins, super lubricants and super moisturizers. Now Estée Lauder has combined in one cream the most beneficial of these cosmetic miracle workers: turtle oil for lubrication, shark oil for vitamin A, silicone to retain skin moisture, and the new light charcoal that helps rebuild tissues. All of these are whipped up into a golden jar and labeled Re-Nutrieve. The supposed miracle cream came in a 22 karat gold plated jar, and the 16-ounce version sold for $115, which would be expensive today, but was an eye-watering price in the 1950s. In fact, it made it one of the most expensive skincare products in the world at the time. As I said though, despite the ridiculous price, the Re-Nutrieve cream was very successful for Estée Lauder, and over the next 2 years, they would expand the line to include lipsticks, serums, eye creams, and foundations. It may not have sold to the mass market in the kind of numbers Youth Dew had, but it became an iconic product for the brand, being seen by many as the it cream of the time, and it firmly established Estée Lauder as a luxury brand that could compete with the most prestigious names in the industry. However, their product expansion didn't always go smoothly. One of their biggest failures during this period was their attempt at introducing a line of products aimed specifically at teenagers. It included the Teen Beauty Cleanser, Teen Powder Compact, and 2 shades of lipstick, Teen Pink and Teen Coral. I think the teen marketing might have been a little bit too heavy-handed, just put teen in the name kind of thing. Years later, Estée herself admitted that this line wasn't her best idea, saying another mistake was trying to reach the teenage market. Teen cleanser, teen this, teen that. Teens were simply not our image, even though teens can surely benefit from our products. Estée would actually eventually work out a way to reach the teen market, but we'll move on to that in a little bit. Despite the failure of the teen line, Estée Lauder had so much success still during the 1950s and were bringing in millions a year. So it's no surprise, but by the end of 1958, they'd expanded outside of the US for the first time, with their products being sold in Canada. And by 1960, they traveled across the Atlantic, and you can find Estée Lauder products on the shelves in Harrods in London. A year after that, they eventually made it into Asia, starting to sell in Hong Kong. But as positive as these moves were, Estée had her sights set on breaking into the French beauty market most of all. Fuck everyone else, France. That's because France was seen as the center of the beauty world back then. The problem she had though was similar to when she was trying to get into US department stores. None of the French buyers thought their customers would have any interest in an American product, so they just weren't interested in stocking Estée Lauder's products. The main store Estée wanted to get into was the prestigious Galeries Lafayette store in Paris. Like she did with Saks Fifth Avenue, she knew if she could get into Galeries Lafayette, the other French department stores would soon follow. And just as she did with Saks, Estée had a plan on how she'd do it. She'd already approached the buyer at Galeries Lafayette plenty of times before and had been rejected, so Estée knew she'd had to try a different tactic. So one day, she walked into the department store carrying a bottle of Youth Dew bath oil, and she accidentally spilt it on the floor. The signature scent of Youth Dew spread throughout the department store, and customers allegedly started asking sales staff what that smell was. They obviously didn't know, so Estée apparently stepped in and told them it was her bath oil. And according to Estée, the French customers were as taken by the scent of Youth Dew as her US customers had been. And the stunt ultimately helped her secure a deal with Galeries Lafayette to stock her products from 1963 onwards. Chapter 6, Becoming a Beauty Conglomerate. From then on, Estée Lauder just continued to grow at a rate few brands had ever managed before. Throughout the 60s, they launched 2 successful subsidiary brands, Aramis and Clinique. Aramis, founded in 1963, was one of the first men's luxury grooming brands. This was so ahead of its time. It included all the standard men's grooming products like aftershave, shaving cream, deodorant, soap butter rope, but the range also included some more unusual products for men at the time, like Mark Out, which was a matte finish cream meant to disguise blemishes, eye pads to cool and soothe around the skin around the eyes, a pick-up mask, which was described as a 10-minute cocktail for the face that's invisible to others, and basically refreshes and gives your skin a firm and toned look. Clinique launched in 1968, which was arguably the first first ever dermatologist-developed skincare brand, as well as being allergy tested and fragrance-free. It was Estée Lauder's second attempt at reaching a younger audience, and this time it worked out so much better. I've done a whole video on Clinique here. The brand launched with an outstanding 117 products, which is kind of insane, and the product line covered skincare, body care, hair care, and makeup also. It also helped popularize the idea of having an actual skincare routine, which was fairly unheard of at the time. Clinique was one of the first ever brands to be marketed as science-based, and it was a huge hit with younger generations. It took a few years to really take off and actually drained Estée Lauder's cash reserves to a large extent, but eventually Clinique became hugely, massively profitable for them, especially once the idea of the 3-step skincare routine they were promoting finally took off with younger beauty consumers: cleanse, tone, moisturize. A lot of this growth was actually driven by Estée's sons, Leonard and Ronald, who had both started working for the brand by then. They wanted to turn Estée Lauder into a more modern, more internationally recognized beauty conglomerate. They were responsible for launching new brands, buying up other brands, pushing expansion worldwide, and setting up a new research and development lab, and basically overall modernizing the way Estée Lauder was run. After the eventual successful launches of Aramis and Clinique, Leonard and Ronald started taking more and more responsibility for the running of Estée Lauder, particularly after Estée herself reached retirement age in 1973. She wouldn't actually retire for 2 more decades though, and despite her age, she continued to be involved in the company that she'd founded. Between Estée and her sons, the company continued to grow throughout the 70s and the 80s, opening stores or beauty counters in Germany, Switzerland, Japan, Australia, Italy, and more, as well as expanding their product range drastically, introducing more shade ranges and formula options for different skin types and shades and tones. One of their most popular releases during this period was their Night Repair Serum, which would later become another iconic product for the brand, which has been duped over and over again, though they would change the name slightly to the Advanced Night Repair Serum. It was a pioneering nighttime anti-aging serum at the time, and it's been one of their most popular products for decades now. It's iconic, instantly recognizable, as well as being one of the best-selling beauty products of all time by any brand. Reports have stated that Estée Lauder sells around 22 bottles of Advanced Night Repair every minute around the world, and it's not cheap either, with a 1.7 ounce bottle setting you back $130. The amount of money this product has brought in for the brand over the last 4 decades must be crazy. That wasn't the only star product for the brand though, with Youth Dew also continuing to be a huge hit for the brand during these years, with the sales of the line reaching 150 million units in 1984. It was during the 70s and 80s that Estée Lauder was really taking over the beauty world and starting to make money at an obscene rate. In 1989, they made $1 billion in a single financial year for the first time in their history. And it didn't stop there though. 1990 saw the launch of Origins, another subsidiary brand of Estée Lauder, this time helping to start the trend of natural, clean beauty, which went on to take over the beauty world for decades. The less said about that, the better, I think. I don't want to get irate in this video. The 90s also saw Estée Lauder start their regular acquisitions of and partnerships with existing brands, including signing a fragrance licensing agreement with Tommy Hilfiger in 1993, as well as acquiring a majority interest in MAC Cosmetics in 1994. They'd follow this up shortly with another licensing deal, this time with Kiton, which is an Italian fashion house, as well as acquiring both La Mer and Bobbi Brown Cosmetics in 1995. 1995 was a big year for the brand overall. Aside from the acquisitions, it was also the year Estée Lauder finally went public on the New York Stock Exchange. The brand raised $335 million in doing so, though Estée made sure to keep the majority of shares within the family so that the Lauders would always maintain control of their company. Estimates at the time valued the brand around $2 billion. Estée also finally retired after the company went public, bless her. She was 86 years old at the time. She handed over control to her son Leonard, who became chairman as well as CEO. Her grandson William Lauder also became the executive chairman, and 2 of her granddaughters took senior positions in the company as well. She was alive to see the brand she'd built continue to dominate the industry, including acquiring a majority interest in Bumble and Bumble hair salons in 2000, as well as while signing an exclusive global licensing deal with fashion designer Michael Kors in 1993. By the time Estée passed away in 2004, she'd gone from helping her uncle make creams in a kitchen at home to building one of the biggest beauty conglomerates the industry has ever seen. Chapter 7. Estée's reputation and legacy. Over the almost 50 years that Estée spent running her namesake brand, and even longer if you include the time she spent selling cosmetics before founding the company we know today, she built quite the reputation for herself. For some, she's seen as the woman who built modern beauty as we know it. For others, she's a perfect example of everything that is wrong with the industry. A lot of people who worked with Estée have praised her for a charismatic and charming personality, saying that she was incredibly persuasive and could talk to anybody she came into contact with. She also trained her sales staff to engage with customers the same way that she did. She trained them to greet customers warmly, to compliment the skin, to apply products directly to their face, demonstrating how the creams feel and, convincing the customer that they made a huge difference to her skin. Sounds like Lush, my Lush training. This training that she'd often did herself when she opened a new beauty counter or store played a really big part in the success of the brand. It set them apart from so many other brands and definitely had a noticeable impact on sales. Practices like this that Estée started back in 1940s went on to become the standard in the beauty industry, but some felt that she was a little too obsessed with how her salespeople interacted with customers. Lots of former employees have said that she could be very controlling and demanding, picking at every little thing you did and setting unrealistic expectations. She was apparently obsessed with perfection, which, to be fair, she said that herself, but to the point that she could become unreasonably angry if you got one small thing wrong, including screaming during meetings and abruptly firing executives publicly if they disappointed her. She could allegedly be so intimidating and even aggressive that some employees reported referring to her as the most terrifying woman in cosmetics. She definitely gained a reputation as a ruthless businesswoman, but some feel that she took it too far and that she'd do whatever it took to find success. Some historians feel that Estée was obsessed with making enough money to join the wealthy elites she admired so much, to the point that she'd happily lie and fuck people over to do it. She apparently used to regularly claim that she was descended from European aristocracy, with one biography saying that her favorite story was to say that she'd been brought up by her Viennese mother in a sumptuous home with stables and a chauffeured car and an Italian nurse. Obviously, this was all a lie, as we saw earlier in this video. And in the years since she passed, many of her claims and stories have come under scrutiny. She'd like to talk a lot about how she invented her own formulas, especially in the early days of the company, but most historians believe that she actually just repackaged her uncle's formulas at first, and that later on she'd hired chemists to create her hit products, while still claiming publicly that she had come up with it. She also had a real reputation for copying successful products released by her competitors. This kind of thing was very common back then, and pretty much everyone copied each other to some extent, but Estée Lauder was seen by many as the most aggressive when it came to copying. Estée herself even openly admitted to copying products, saying that hers were better than the original. Even the stories we covered earlier about how she got into Saks and Galeries Lafayette are questioned by many. They can be seen as examples of how clever and tenacious Estée was, but they can also be seen as evidence of the lack of morals that many now attribute to the brand, as a willingness to lie and trick people as long as it benefited her and her business. Now, you might be thinking that these are all things that most beauty brands do. There are loads of beauty brands today with founders who will make up things about their past because it makes for a better founding story, or they'll claim that they came up with these formulas themselves and it was magic when they actually just opted for some pre-made formula that loads of other brands are using, or they'll straight up copy another brand's product and just change it enough to avoid a lawsuit. We've all seen that. But that's kind of the point. Many feel like Estée Lauder didn't just pioneer industry norms like giving out free samples, the gift with purchase, or the way beauty advisors interact with customers. They feel like the brand and its founder were also pioneers of some of the worst parts of the beauty industry. And worse still, that she taught her sons to view business in the same ruthless way that she did, where the goal is to make as much money as possible, regardless if it means that you have to trick people and lie to people, make unfounded claims, rip off other brands, buy out competitors, or just generally lack any morals whatsoever. Under Leonard and Ronald's leadership, the brand has experienced controversy after controversy, including lawsuits, multiple boycotts, and links to some of the worst people you could think of. It's not a legacy anyone should be proud of. But like I said at the start, we'll get into the more modern history of Estée Lauder, the brand, including the many controversies, in another video, because it's a whole video's worth. For now, that's all I have for you, but let me know what you think of Estée Lauder, the woman, and the brand in the comments. Do you see her as a visionary entrepreneur who changed the beauty industry for the better, a successful woman? Or do you think she and her brand represent some of the worst of what the beauty industry has become?